Hi there, Virgo. I want to wish those of you who are solar Virgos a very happy birthday. This is your month. It's the month of Virgo. Um, and with that, I want to bring some attention to some of the movements that Mercury's been making because the rhythms of Virgo are dictated by the rhythms of Mercury. Mercury being the domicile ruler of Virgo and the exaltation ruler. Um, so it's kind of important to keep an eye on where Mercury is going when we're taking Virgo or even Gemini into consideration. And right now, today, I think about 5 hours after the time that I'm recording this video, Mercury is going to be stationing direct. And within like another 16-ish hours, Venus is actually going to be moving out of Virgo into Libra. So out of the Mercury ruled sign into her own domicile. And that's important, I believe, because the beginning portion of Mercury's retrograde cycle this time around was actually accentuated by Venus moving into Virgo. So I think that was like August 5th. You had Mercury stationing retrograde about like 4 or 5 degrees of Virgo, if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere around there, the earlier degrees of Virgo, at the exact same day that Venus moved into Mercury's sign, Virgo, rather. So there's some sort of conversation that's happening here between the principles of Mercury and the principles of Venus. And I did try to do your reading yesterday, Virgo, and ran into some difficulty. Like the overall message of the reading, like I finished the entire reading, the overall message just kept coming back to this point of stasis, like standstill, like waiting. And by the time I finished the reading, I realized it was like every bit as much a message for me in that moment as it was for Virgo. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to post this reading. I'm going to wait and I'm going to try again later and see if the message has evolved. And it definitely has. I did something a little bit different for your reading today, and kind of inspired by the recent astrology podcast episode on the I Ching, I actually, tossed some coins and got a hexagram to kind of help me condense the message for you today, Virgo. And it was actually the fifth hexagram. Here, I'll show you right here. I don't know a whole lot about the I Ching, but I've always been very curious and interested in it. But what this hexagram represents is waiting, again, like that period of stasis. But the overall message contained within that waiting is that at the end of this period, there's like good fortune, like something good comes of it. It's interesting because I also pulled a rune card for you, and this is Degas, this is breakthrough, this is transformation, this is like the new dawn at the end of a cycle. So it's like a double confirmation of going through this period of stasis, this period of revision with Mercury retrograding, and kind of reevaluating things or trying to see things from a slightly different angle. So for your significator card today, we actually have the Hanged Man. This is Pisces, but it's also a state of mind, a state of outward stasis for inward reflection, for a deliberate attempt to view the world through a different perspective, which kind of helps you understand the shape of it a little bit better. I don't know if you've ever like sat on a couch with your head hanging off and looking at everybody around you, or watching TV upside down, but it gives you like a totally different experience of what's happening. And you notice things that you didn't notice from the upright perspective, so to speak, from the mundane, normal day-to-day perspective. Like whatever this Hanged Man is, it's like this shift in perception, this shift in consciousness to better understand the shape of things. And I feel like that's very much in line with Venus having traversed through the sign of Virgo during this retrograde cycle. It's like learning to see the shape of things differently. Um, Traditionally Venus is a little uncomfortable in Virgo. Um, it's actually the sign of her fall, her detriment. But rather than like focusing on how Venus doesn't work well in Virgo, I'd rather focus on what it is that she brings to the table in the sign of Virgo. A greater appreciation for details, for the items within your field of perception that are otherwise typically overlooked or missed. Um, there is this idea of Virgo being a very meticulous sign, um, and with Venus there, it's like the beauty is found in the details. Like instead of the devil is in the details, it's like the beauty is in the details. And what beauty provides is a sort of connection between mundane perception with source consciousness, because there's like a dialogue that occurs in a moment of appreciating beauty, where it's like, wow, this manifest universe is something special, is something magical, and that experience has been locked away in the tiny details. So if we haven't been paying attention to those little details, if we haven't been looking beneath the surface or looking up a little bit closer at the circumstances around us, it's been very difficult for us to find the Venusian property of inspiration, of sensual experience, of enjoyment, of being able to find the beauty and the artistic principle in our experiences. But if we have been paying attention and have been kind of allowing ourselves to sit back and enter into a state of stasis in some form, we've been able to better access the Venusian principle. Right here, covering you, we have the Ace of Wands. That's the cardinal point of Aries, the vernal equinox point. But it's also the principle of like blossoming energy, like I wanted to say fructifying, like a source point from which creative energy kind of bursts forward. It's that breakthrough energy, very much right here in Degas, in the breakthrough rune with this particular deck. It's this dawn point. It's what comes after the period of waiting, the stasis that we keep referring to. It's Mercury stationing direct today. It's like things are finally in order and finally moving forward again, but we weren't able to reach this point without the period of revision and reflection that came throughout this entire month of Venus being in Virgo. This entire cycle of Mercury's retrograde. So I feel like that energy is kind of coming back, and we're better able to understand our movements in the larger scheme of things. So covering you, I meant crossing you, we have the Six of Cups right here. And that's the middle decan of fixed water. So middle decan of Scorpio. Pardon me. So this to me kind of connects back to what I was saying about accessing the Venusian principle. Shifting your perspective and looking a little bit closer at details that you otherwise wouldn't perceive. And being able to find the space of enjoyment in that state, or in those perceptions, in that phenomena that was kind of presenting itself in those spaces. Could also be that there's I almost get like the sense of like forcing the experience, like because it's been a little bit more difficult to find Venus in our day-to-day experiences, having, requiring a bit more effort and a bit more of a shift in perception. If we haven't been willing to do that, or if we haven't been able to do that, I almost like going through the motions of things that would otherwise evoke the Venusian principles of enjoyment, trying to find inspiration by just doing the mechanical work and hoping that the feeling follows. Given that it's kind of a contrary energy in the cross position, I feel like it's been a little bit uncomfortable. It's kind of working against the natural flow, the natural fluidity of the energies right now. But I mean, with this shift of Venus going into Libra, I think tomorrow morning at some point, at least for my particular time zone, central time zone in America, there is a shift back into Venus's natural capabilities of presenting us with inspiration and with romance and connection and sensual enjoyment and experience, and being able to see those bright, beautiful colors, and appreciating art again, appreciating our flow state again. And with that said, it's like I don't want to discount the experience that we've had with Venus going through Virgo, like this kind of, I'm hearing like segmented period of time has been necessary for us. It's like the book that we needed to read to understand how we're going to move forward with strategy. At the base of the reading, we have the Four of Swords right here. That's the last deck of Libra. But in this deck, it's called Truce. So again, this is like the root of the situation, falling back into that singular state, that singular consciousness, turning the mind within on itself. I'm hearing like synergizing the elements, like the four elements, bringing them together within yourself, and trying to find a flow state that way, or trying to find connection that way. Maybe because of Venus's Virgo transit, like not being able to find that outside, so trying to find it on the inside is like the overall shape of the energy in this reading. Behind you we have Art, which I believe is the Temperance card in other decks. I love this card. That again, kind of the same imagery that I was talking about, was like bringing the four elements together within, like synthesizing something on the inside, and through that process of inner refinement and inner mastery, being able to enact outward changes. But they're like informed now, like the recipe, you've read that book, like I was saying, you have a better understanding of what is the proper course of action to take. And it's been through this process of blending the Mercury with the Venus, like of blending the mind and the intellect and the focus, your thought, and aligning it with sensual experience in some way. with the Venusian principle of enjoyment, with inspiration, like I'm getting like these two different frequencies starting to like harmonize, and like finding that point of synchronization that's been like this whole process that's been unfolding. Crowning the reading, we have the Universe card right here, associated with Saturn. But yeah, this is like that breaking out of this inward turn out into the world, and bringing the energy that you've been cultivating and refining within yourself out into manifest experience. And also an acknowledgement of the natural cycles and rhythms, like paying attention to what the planets are doing, paying attention to what the moon is doing, paying attention to especially what Mercury is doing, because it's very relevant for you, and learning to work within those rhythms and harmonize yourself with that. I feel like that's a gift that Virgo has innately, in some ways maybe more so than other signs. For better or worse, I feel like it can be a little bit corrupted sometimes, but Virgo has this natural capability to withdraw from worldly experience while simultaneously like infusing material experience in their sort of meditation, like finding information or knowledge about the outside world from within, like acknowledging that the outside world is just a reflection of what's inside. And given that that's crowning the reading, it's like that's what everything has been leading up to. All of these principles, whether they're opposing or not, kind of reaching this culmination point, you know, where it's like as within, so without. You know, creating your reality from a state of deep inner understanding and trust in yourself, and mastery over yourself and over potentially contradictory forces within yourself. You know, the mind and the heart, you know, Mercury and Venus sort of dynamic. Before you, we have the Death card. And I love this card. A lot of people see the Death card and they're like made a little nervous by it, but I think it's a good card because it represents the principle of change, the principle of breakthrough, of transformation, of one cycle ending and another beginning. Like, especially like if you look at this card and you see like the different lifetimes and how they're kind of arranged in circular, spiraling manner, it's almost like when one so-called life ends, you move on to the next, and when that one ends, you move on to the next, and it just keeps on going on and on and on. And it's like this principle of cycling through reality, of bookending specific periods in time, you know, like culmination points and conjunction points. Like it plays out above our very heads, even on a day-to-day basis. But like this is the period of time for you, Virgo, where you are breaking out of this hanging man state with new wisdom, new understanding, new faith, new relationship with yourself, new appreciation for yourself and for your abilities, you know, more able to see how the little things add up within yourself to create the larger person that you are, and having a greater sense of trust and appreciation for that. And I'm saying that because of that Venus transit through Virgo. That's like your first house, like turning the appreciation, the love within, and kind of reinforcing and nourishing that aspect of self, nourishing the self. For the energy around you, we have the Four of Discs right here. And it's interesting because as I was kind of preparing for this reading all morning and just trying to kind of sit with it and connect with Virgo, and one of the images that came into mind, this card always reminds me of like a computer chip, but I was literally thinking in my head the association between like computer chips and Virgo. Like it's this very meticulous, very structured, very exact arrangement of metals and minerals and into an ordered architecture, and its mutability is expressed in how it is on the one hand a physical object, like it's this little chip that you can see and touch and adjust as necessary, but it also, when activated with electricity in specific ways and in specific interactions with other computer components, it creates this whole other world to interact with. The digital space, the computerized space made digital, made interactive. It's like this kind of in-between state. Like it's physical, it's manifest, yes, but it's also manifest in a different form, different shape, different elements almost, while still operating within the material world. Yeah. It's interesting. The Four of Coins is the last decan of Capricorn. That's the fifth sign from Virgo, so usually the fifth house if you have Virgo rising. Okay, that was weird. Okay, so this to me is almost like a crystallization, a concretization of the energy that you've been working with on the inside, on the physical plane. Like it's being made manifest, but it's like almost like arranging specific, this is just an analogy maybe, but like arranging specific crystals in a certain pattern to be conductive for the energy that you're working with, but really like establishing a physical space of power within which you're able to interface with your life and with your reality, from a slightly different angle, like manipulating physical currents with non-physical energies by interfacing with this physical arrangement, these crystals or these computer chips, like some form of interfacing between non-physical and physical is taking place, which is a little bit similar to the Gemini reading that I gave a few days back, where they're working with like the element of air and like bringing that down to earth, like through very kind of electric lightning type energies. And maybe that's kind of like an overall theme with what Mercury is doing right now. I'm not entirely sure. Mercury's stationing at about 21 degrees of Leo, which for you is your 12th house. But it's also like this principle of clear consciousness, like clear cognition, like these breakthrough enlightenment type experiences, an intellect that's based around illuminating and understanding and bringing awareness to things, turning the power switch on so that the electricity can interact with this computer chip and create this digital world, so to speak. For the people around you, we have the Eight of Swords. interference. I believe that's that first decan of Gemini. There's nothing currently located in that decan, but there are Jupiter and Mars in Gemini in the second and third decans, respectively. But this deck calls this card interference. So it could be that you've kind of come to this state of flow, of working within your circuitry unimpeded, and having corrected, like having soldered connections, like a lot of computer imagery. It's weird, but like a lot of repair work was done by you to be able to allow the flow of energy to kind of circulate without running into any dead ends in the circuitry, without having to cause any shortages or anything like that. But with the people around you being represented by the interference card, it's almost like maybe your methods are being questioned. Like they're trying to make sense of the logic behind your approach here, and they can't quite do it because they haven't been the hanged man the way that you've been. They haven't had this shift in consciousness, this shift in perspective that's allowed you to come at the world from a different angle. And so it could be that they're trying to understand this, and in the process it's probably coming across as a little argumentative or distrusting. A lot of air, obviously, with this swords card, but a lot of discourse or argument or back and forth type energies, just trying to hash out what's been going on. And it's just interesting. As I said hash, I was seeing like strings of letters and numbers, like an encryption hash. I don't understand a whole lot about that, but I do know a little bit. Like the message that you are interfacing with, the information that you're interfacing with, is encrypted, and the people around you don't have the keys to get through the encryption. And so I don't necessarily see that you're trying to explain to them or provide them with the information. It's more like they're trying to break in some fashion and understand for their own sakes. And you're not giving them the keys. You're not decrypting anything for them. But they definitely see the change that you've gone through. They can see how your approach has changed and how differently you're walking upon the earth now. And they want to understand it. But I'm getting the sense, like, is it really their business? Like, does it really matter? Like, don't be too distracted by the inquiry, I guess. For your hopes and fears, we have the Nine of Wands, which in this deck is called Strength. That's the middle decan of Sagittarius, your fourth house. I heard resolution, like being resolute, especially with regards to the inquiry, the so-called inquiry or inquisition being imposed upon you by outside forces, outside figures. Retaining your connection to whatever this flow state, this inner understanding, this inner perspective shift, like hold on to that and hold on to your key to the door that allows you to step into that space. Retain the knowledge that you've acquired and the experience that you've acquired. and also obviously retaining your ability to slip into the state that allows you to interface with that. Like, remember how to access it, remember your password, remember your keys, and retain that. And that's what's going to help kind of guide you through this breakthrough moment. You know, you got to pass through the birthing canal, so to speak, to move out of this previous cycle into the next. And it's a difficult space. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of influence, there's a lot of distraction, a lot of energies in state of transition, and it can be a little bit difficult to retain your inner stability, your inner awareness. But the message here is very much like, hold on, endure, wait, keep yourself not necessarily guarded, but like steadfast and secure in yourself. And when you come out the end of this, it's like you're going to be glad that you held on to that, because it's going to be of use to you in the next cycle. So for your final outcome card, we have the Queen of Swords here. Focus is kind of getting on my nerves today. So if this represents like an actual person in your life, could be Gemini, Libra, or an Aquarius. Could also just be emphasizing that 10th house, that Gemini, that with this movement of Mercury going direct again and eventually moving back into his own sign of domicile and exaltation, Virgo, like that Mercury ruled 10th house and first house of yours, like this interface between self and your public persona, your career, the work that you do within the world, you know, that's publicly visible and affects people in your day-to-day life. Like, there's a crystallization of the new figure, is what I'm hearing, like the new persona. And not necessarily that you've like changed your personality or that you've like changed yourself, but there's been such a profound shift inwardly that now you are, it's like you're operating at a different level, a different frequency, a level up, I guess, in some form or another. And I keep looking at this card. She's holding that kind of mask face looking thing in her hand, and I almost feel like that's the old persona. Like she pulled it off. I mean, ignore the fact that it has a beard, but like that was the old paradigm, and the new paradigm is kind of like crystallized behind her, and she's using the energy, the currents that are being able to pass through these crystals that she's manifested as her throne. So if we go back to the I Ching, I feel like the reading very much kind of stayed in line with that, where the general message was to wait and to endure through this period, and to obviously remain resolute, like I was saying, while retaining knowledge that on the other side of this transition point is some sort of breakthrough, some sort of blessing, some I heard welcoming. or you're welcome. Some gift, maybe? Recognition? Yeah, I think that's where we're at, Virgo. I'll check in with y'all again pretty soon, but wishing you the best. Again, happy birthday to you solar Virgos out there. Enjoy this month of Virgo and take care of yourselves. Wishing you the best.